Hey, how's it going? Michael Moser here, and I am joined today with Ian. Ian, how are you doing?
I'm good, Michael. How you been?
Oh, I've been all right. Been waiting to redo this this interview. Uh, Ian is actually the founder and inventor of the Center Cam, the camera that I'm actually using right now and would be using during my streams on Twitch. Ian, can you tell us more about your company and the Center Cam?
Yeah. Uh, CenterCam is a idea that we had. I was finishing a master's in social work during 2020 when the pandemic hit, and I was counseling kids in a teen rehabilitation center, and we switched to remote. And all of a sudden, I was confronted with how much remote tech sucks. Like, I donated a cell phone to the school so the kids would have Zoom on their end, and then we were using Zoom as a platform. And so just had my computer at that time, and the kids were like looking around like this, and I was looking around like that. And of course, when you have a screen edge webcam, this is your view, a lot of the time because you're looking at your camera and or your screen, but the camera is looking down at you. And I mean, I'm a middle aged guy and I have a decent hairline, but this isn't a great look for anybody. And
Right.
so all of that was like, I literally went to Google and I typed in middle screen webcam and I didn't see anything. And then I typed in like camera webcam in the middle of the screen and then center screen webcam. I tried all those different derivatives and I couldn't find a webcam that was in the middle of the screen. And the idea was getting eye contact. Like right now, you're staring at me, I'm staring at you. It's about as in person as it gets. But at that time, CenterCam didn't exist and I couldn't find anything. And so I just thought, I wonder what it would take. And so throughout 2020, it was just a side project. I mean, I was a broke grad student at the time and I had a bunch of other stuff going. But I sourced a really small USB enabled webcam and it was actually a security camera, but we got it. It was oriented wrong. It didn't have like a flex tube like our current version has. Like it needed a lot of work, but I put it in the middle of the screen and I thought, okay, I'm onto something here. And then we spent 2020 redesigning it and getting it so it would be quickly customizable to different workstations. Like right now, I was showing off my Albert Einstein picture maybe over my shoulder, and but I actually don't want that in the frame, so I'm gonna reframe it real quick, and it reframes really quickly. You do see a little bit of a Muhammad Ali picture on the screen over here, but anyway, that's the feed of him anyway. First, second, first round, I can show you.
Yeah, the iconic
Yeah,
photo, the big finish.
yeah, yeah. So I have him looking over my shoulder every day. So between Albert Einstein and Muhammad Ali, I have some good influences in my office. Anyway, but the point is, we wanted to be quickly and easily customizable, and that was one of the things we were looking at. And so we launched a Kickstarter once we had a good operational model, and Kickstarter went really well because at that time, I mean, I thought this was a good idea, but you never know. All your friends. I have really good friends, so it's tough to get like the real market answer from your friends sometimes. Like, yeah,
Right.
I'll pay money for it, and so will strangers. And so we launched the Kickstarter more to prove the idea than to raise the money, and it resonated with a lot of people. We were blown away by the reception of it. And then we switched from Kickstarter to Indiegogo, and we were there for over a year. So we ended up raising well over $1 million, and we had the opportunity over 2020 or 2021 to improve the tech and improve the model. For those at home that aren't actually on a center cam, this is what I'm talking about. It's a it's a small USB enabled camera. Um, we are now shipping it with 16 inches of flex tube. It used to just be 12. And then this is a clip. This is our patent pending technology. And well, it's almost there. We've almost gotten it approved. And so you just clip it in. This goes on top of your screen. If this is your screen, it goes boom. And then that camera dwells in the middle of the screen. It's the size of a dime or my pinky. So it's super small. You don't notice it. And it allows you to look past the camera at the person you're actually talking to, which allows for you to have eye contact. It allows you to see the nonverbals, so you don't have to make the screen edge webcam choice of looking away, having a bad look so you can see the person you're talking to. You know, it allows you to present yourself better. Usually it's hard to get a webcam at the right angle. And so it's usually either coming down, or in the case of a laptop, the angle is coming up, you know. And so you have just kind of weird angles, but center cam allows you to have a more natural focal angle. So it allows you to have a better look, like for job interviews or whatever.
Yeah, I actually really do like the bin that it has, because I was adjusting it earlier from my trying to hide out my walls of nothing, of just tech stuff that I got laying around. But yeah, it makes it real easy. And I noticed that once I could bend it to a certain spot, it'll actually stay there. So it's just
Yeah.
like on me to get like that right spot. See, I had it, and then I and that ruined it trying to show off. Uh,
Yeah, you're right.
but yeah, I guess now we just see the background. I mean, Ian, I have been using this thing for a little while. I've been using it on my Twitch streams, and I would like to say that it's not as imposing as I thought it would be, like invasive, taking up part of your screen space, because it is so small. That it is like this little dot there, but you can still look right at it and see your entire screen. How long did it take for you to get a camera this small to actually work properly? Because this thing is very tiny. Like you said, it's the size of a dime. You guys had to go through so many prototypes. You said you've been working on it since like 2020, 2019, right around the pandemic. Just how many prototypes did you guys go through, and just like how long did it take for you to reach this point?
Man, that's an excellent question. Probably 15, 10 or 15 different prototypes.
Wow.
And so we got the initial one, but it was a wide angle fisheye lens. And so it was way too wide. I think it was a 90-degree plus fisheye focal angle. So it just captured everything in the room. And the fisheye look is just, it wasn't what we were looking for in a webcam. So part of it was finding a lens. And the way our tech works is there's a separate image sensor and a lens. It's kind of like a DSLR camera. And so when you want to focus it, you're literally moving the lens backwards, farther away and closer to the image sensor. And so not all lenses that fit the threads for our camera would actually work as a lens, just because that lens, some would actually go straight to the image sensor and they still wouldn't be focused, or some wouldn't have enough threads to even go in the housing. They would need to be farther out of the housing. And so some of what we had to figure out was how much threads would accommodate the most amount of lenses, and then finding the manufacturers that had lenses that would work for what we're trying to do. So now we have 3 different options for lenses, but at the time we just, we ordered what we could find on the internet that was close, and we figured we could adjust it from there. We've had to make a bunch of different internal, I guess I'll call it quality improvements on it. The way the USB cord hits the chip and is soldered there. So if you look at what it is, there's 2 chips in there. One is the actual processing chip, and then one is the actual sensor chip. Both of those are just hotboxed in there, so they get really hot. Our first prototypes, and well, even the first models that we were shipping, they were getting really hot. And so what we did, another thing that we patented is, I don't know if you can see that, there's ridges on the back of it. And those are passive heat sinks. So those help decrease the operating temp of our camera by 10 degrees, which is considerable. Because all the heat from the chips, it's just hot boxed in there and it doesn't have any place to go. This allows the heat to dissipate. Kind of like a radiator in your car. It does the same thing. There are a lot of little things like that we had to improve. One of the things, and we're still improving, one of the things that we improved was the length of the flex tube. This is 16 inches now. It used to just be 12. And the reason we went to a different length is that a lot of our customers are using huge monitors. I'm on a 40-inch monitor, and so my 12-inch center cam can get to the middle of the screen. But on a big monitor, some people are using big screen TVs. And so this allows it to get into the middle of the screen. The other thing that happens is for a handstand mount, you have to use aftermarket software to do it. but you can, or Cobra mount. That's a fun way to say it. But if you want it to stand straight up like that, you need a little, and actually make it anywhere in height. We needed a little more of a base. So we added 4 inches there to allow for a handstand mount. If you wanted to just go freestyle, do your own thing.
I might try that actually.
Yeah. Well, you need aftermarket camera control software to be able to switch it, the orientation 180. It comes natively top down. That's how we programmed it from the factory. That's how our clips set up, etc. But it can do 180. But Eyeglasses is a good aftermarket software to do that. We're in the process of building our own. That's our proprietary camera control software. But we only have some for PC currently, and it's kind of an open source control software. Eyeglasses, OBS are good Mac versions of that allow you to change the orientation 180 if you want to use it that way.
That's actually one of the things I did like about this camera is that I didn't need to download a new piece of software in order to use it. It's quite literally just plug in and use. I have a Logitech 1080p camera. Like you plug it in, you download their proprietary software, and I gotta go through that. And when I start streaming, I gotta use that program in tandem with another program that I'm using. But with this one, all I had to do was plug it in, and Twitch Studios automatically picked it up, and I was able to use it. NVIDIA Broadcast was actually able to automatically pick it up and use it. So it was nice to just be able to plug and play basically. So when it came down to making the camera itself, you guys got it really small. How did you get something like this that's in good quality in such a tiny package? Because like I said, I had a Logitech camera and they're a bit bigger. I got it around here somewhere. Give me 1 sec actually.
Yeah.
So this, if I could pick it up without dropping it. This is my camera.
Yeah. No, it's a great camera. I've got like 4 or 5 webcams hanging out too. I've got a Logitech hanging on my screen as well.
Yeah. So when you look at something like this, and I am actually going to show everybody in a moment on my camera just how small it really is. I'm gonna show a comparison to this. It's basically just where this lens is. All of this is pretty much gone, and you get this. How did you guys manage to get something as powerful as this into something as small as the center cam?
So one of the reasons other webcams are as big as they are is because there's onboard processing. So if I can, I've got a C920 right here. So it's a dope webcam. It's industry standard. It's a great webcam. Like we've got no beef with it.
Yeah, it's the same one I have.
The issue is the size of it. And what they do though is they have onboard processing. They also have stereo mic there, so you have decent sound quality there, depending on how far away you are from it. I'm selling my competitor's product, but the size of it is it allows them to have onboard processing, meaning they're not having to use any of your computer's processing or rely on that at all. And so that helps with most people if they're up to date on their software updates, if they restart their computer at least a couple times a week. Most of that is, you can get away with not having onboard processing, but there are a lot of people a lot of us have bad habits. I'm having to restart my computer. I have like 70, 80 tabs open at any given time. And I find when I start to lag, I just have to restart my computer. Some people don't restart their computer. And for those people, a C920 is going to be able to perform a little bit better than CenterCam in a non-optimized, computer situation because they have onboard processing. CenterCam, we eliminated some of that onboard processing, and we rely on the computer's ability to process graphic, video, images, stuff like that, sound. And so that's how we get away with some of the size of it, is that we have the bare minimum necessary to transmit video, and we're actually relying on the system itself to process some of the capabilities that like a C920 or some of the other ones. There's lots of other webcams out there that are the same thing. They're almost the size of a racquetball, and that's what they're doing. They have onboard processing for that reason. The mic isn't quite where we want it to be. I'll just say it. Like, we're not trying to hide anything. And And that's one thing we're trying to improve in the mic. But right now it's a mono mic. It's not a stereo mic. So that's one of the sacrifices we had to make to get the size that we have. It's passable. You could use it. If you know, I wouldn't, if I were making a podcast, I probably wouldn't use the center cam mic. I'd use my, I have like a Blue Yeti, microphone, and, I have higher quality mics for that. So there are some sacrifices we had to make for that. But that being said, like you said, the main advantage this is kind of, comparing apples to fish. I mean, what Logitech is trying to do is completely different than what we're trying to do. I mean, we're both on webcams or web conferences, but this is all about connection. It's all about eye contact and size. This has to be much smaller than what Logitech has to be, just because we're accomplishing something a little bit different.
Yeah, that's one of the big things you keep bringing up is that the Cinecam is all about being social. Where did this actually come from? Where did this idea of a social camera? Like we have social media, everything is social. So where in the world did the idea of a social camera come from?
Well, that's where it came from. Is 2020, I was, in that grad program to become a social worker, a clinical social worker, to become a therapist, and I've spent some time growing my social media following online. I have a pretty sizable following on Instagram. I mean, it's not crazy, but I spent some time at it. And one thing that I realized that I loved about it is that I was connecting with a lot of people I never would have before. I have followers from all over the world that have written me letters. I correspond with them. And that's something that I love. But one thing that I don't love is that as connected as we're able to be, it doesn't feel as personal as I like my in-person, like my friendships to be in, when we go out on a Friday night. We haven't been able to transmit that sort of energy in live either performances or live relationships to the online space. And so that was one thought process that we had when we were inventing CenterCam was, how can we make video conferencing, which is already remote, how can we make it not feel quite so remote? How can we make it feel more personal? How can we interject some humanity to the space? And what I can tell you is that when you're looking at the top of somebody's head, it doesn't feel very personal, and right. I keep on giving that look just to give you the difference, because now that you've used CenterCam, you kind of you can start to take it for granted that this isn't how it always was or is for a lot of people. They can just see the person they're talking to while they're talking to them,
Yeah, I don't have to.
So,
I don't have to worry about like how you from down below.
So that was absolutely a guiding principle that we were trying to, or I guess a problem we were trying to solve, was how to make the online space feel a little more connected in the human sense of connectedness, how to make it feel more natural, how to be able to present yourself well. And eye contact was part of that, but part of it is also nonverbals. When you think about what communication actually is between humans, I'm talking a lot right now, but you invited me. Anyway,
no, this is what we wanted. We want to know more about you and the CenterCam. So please go ahead.
Well, thank you. That being said, though, I mean, when you look at the math of what communication is, 90% of our communication is nonverbal. It has to do with how I'm presenting. I mean, if you were to expect me to be an expert, you would listen to the tone of my voice, but you would also look at my face. You'd look at, my eye contact. You would, look at my gestures, all of that stuff. It goes into the package of, is this somebody that we should listen to or not? And the problem with screen edge webcams is no matter how much of an expert you are, if you're looking like this, you're just not presenting yourself as well as you could. And so that was part of it as well, was just changing the focal angle. And then there's all sorts of opportunities with that focal angle change. You can use it as it's really easy to use a teleprompter now, because you can put the script right behind the camera and just kind of unfocus your gaze. So have a soft focus with your eyes, and you can read it as if you're just memorizing a text, as if you've memorized a text. You can have your notes right behind the camera. So you don't have to look down here at your notes and then look back up. You can actually have it right there. So it's just a quick little glance, excuse me.
That would make for a great online presentation, because I'm that guy who needs everything written down for me.
Yeah.
Or else I'm gonna be like, wow. Yes, and this thing as well. So that would actually be kind of like nice to see more of. I'm sure this is something that a lot of educators would love to have, since so many of them are now doing online classes, and a lot of them have been transitioning to remote classes for a lot of students who can't make it to school, or because they have to stay home because of health issues. It could even be good for kids who have homeschooling but still like to do regular schooling. So, what are the social ideas behind the center cam beyond just I want to look at somebody in the face? Like, what more can we do with center cam?
One of the things that we've realized when we look at like how to actually use CenterCam is that, I mean, I've mentioned a lot of them already. One of them has to do just with, you know, one-on-one conferences is usually where CenterCam shines. But even in group conferences, one of the opportunities is to move the video conference window around. So right now, you and I are talking. If Evan were to uh, be a participant, or if someone else were to be a participant, what I would do is I would take the video conference window and I would actually move it over to where Evan was, or, you know, whoever the other participant is. And that's how I create eye contact. I don't move the camera around from, you know, during video conferences typically.
Okay.
So I'm in Zooms all week, and or video conferences all week. And so if I'm in a multi-party video conference, like 4 or 5 people, I'm not constantly like adjusting the clip side to side. I'm constantly moving the video conference window around. So when someone's talking, or if I want to make a point towards someone, then I'll put them in, you know, with the center cam right above their forehead, and that allows me to look past the camera, see them. So that's one opportunity. I mean, it's a small USB enabled camera, so there's tons of opportunity. I mean, there's tons of use scenarios. We haven't done a lot of research in like the security space, but a USB enabled camera that, you know, is the size of a dime that you don't really even notice. You could use it for home security. You could use it for site security. Uh, I I spend some of my summers up in Nome, Alaska, and they have a live webcam you can look up. You can Google it and see what the live feed is from Nome, Alaska, and you could use it for that. We haven't pushed that place at all. I mean, and the reason for that is it's not just about growing the business for us. Our specific mission is to help people have better connections online, and so that's what we're focused on. But there's a ton of other use scenarios for it.
So what's the next big push for center cam? You got the basic. Let's go ahead and say that it's the biggest thing that you want it done, to have people just look right at each other. Congratulations, you did that part very well. So what's next? What's the next big thing for center cam beyond just looking at somebody during a conference?
Uh, Improving the tech. Right now, what we're finding, there are some great opportunities with a separate image sensor lens. But for the average consumer, I think it's a little more complex than they want it. They just want it to work like, you know, most webcams do. They don't want to have to actually adjust the focal length or the focal distance between the lens and the image sensor, depending on the use scenario. Like you're fairly close. I think center, did you have to adjust the focus at all?
I did it just to mess with it. Just when you told me it
Okay.
was manual, I did it just to see how easy it
Okay.
was, and it was just super simple. Didn't take as much as I thought it would, but yeah, I did it just to mess with it.
That being said, you're above average. Congratulations. And but a lot of our users, they don't they haven't done enough research on, they like the idea of eye contact, but they don't know the delivery method of the tech. And so we're creating tutorials for people to help support people. Obviously, I've been on support calls myself. Our team does too, to help people dial in the focus on their lens. Um, and for most people, it's fine, you know, but some people are farther back. Some people are really close to their laptop. And so that requires a little bit of adjustment. And the point of that is there's a simpler delivery method, which is fixed focus. So I just got an email back from our engineering team that's developing it's kind of a redesign of our 1.0 camera, which is what you're using. And then the second one is we also just received a really, really, really good I don't even want to call it prototype. It's basically the production model we're going to go to, but we had to pass it off, and the lighting is just, it's dope. So it's a 5 megapixel camera. It performs at a higher level, but it's also autofocus. So, you know, whether you're way back here, it would focus up here. So it's more expensive. Just that's what the chips are. Autofocus lenses are more expensive, but it's a dope camera. It's a little bit higher quality. Like for content creators, for video, it's going to shoot a little bit better video for that. So that's where we're going, man. Eventually, the holy grail for us is 4K, because right now chip technology that's really small in the 4K space just doesn't exist. So we're going to have to do some unique configurations to get 4K, but that's where we want to end up. So it has to do with higher quality video.
Okay. I actually do want to ask you about something that's slightly outside of your expertise. You brought up your engineers. I've been wanting to talk to you about your engineers for a while, because you said you were going to school for social work. You were doing social work.
Yeah.
How in the world do you go from social work to engineering? I would like to know more about your engineering team and how you work with them. From, hey guys, as a social worker, I want to be able to look at people in a small camera, make it happen. Like how did that work out for you guys?
Well, I've never had less than 2 or 3 jobs at any given time. So I've done a ton of different stuff. And so the short of it is I spent 10 years in Alaska diving for gold in the summers. And so I would build boats I started off from kind of out of scraps. Like I had a skiff, like a small riverboat, and then I had some floats, and I made an outrigger out of it, kind of like a really Mad Max version of Hawaiian canoes, you know. and then anyway, between the boat and the outrigger, I put a sluice box, and I went gold diving, and I ended up on a show for it, which was like a million years ago. But there's a show on Discovery Channel that I was a talent on that show for a minute, but I still do it. I love diving and I love the process. So I built 4 gold diving boats now, and I'm just about done with a cabin that I built, and I didn't really contract much of it. I had helpers that helped me with certain things, but I built most of it myself. And, you know, so I've spent a lot of, and it's a small home. It's only about 700 square feet. And there's a lot of design decisions you have to make to have a full bathroom in a 700 square foot house. And so I love the design process. There's a lot of functional and creative that happens when you're building a gold diving boat that has a purpose. And so I have a lot of country engineering experience.
Oh, okay.
and I'm fairly creative with building things from scratch. I can build just about anything with metal or wood or plastic. And so I got to working prototypes really quickly, just based on my experience with kind of imagineering the flow of how something would work, and then putting together, you know, crappy prototypes. The initial prototype we had, I mean, I went straight back to my roots in gold diving in Alaska, and I got a zip tie and I got some duct tape. And that was the original flex tube that I needed to see, hey, could this get in the middle of the screen and actually sit there in a way that doesn't piss me off?
Right. So duct tape's the answer for everything.
Yeah. So that was the first one. And the point is, it was quick. Like if I had gotten bogged down in like, this is ugly or this is stupid, or if someone was looking over my shoulder, they'd think, what are you doing? I never would have started, you know, but
Right.
the initial camera that I got, it was pretty small. And then I needed it to be in the middle of the screen. And so I was like, well, let's try, what do I have around? And it was like, okay, I've got some tape, okay, what do I need that's stiff? Okay, zip tie, cut it, boom, tape, middle of the screen. It happened in 5 minutes. It was a really quick and ugly version, but it was like, okay, yeah, I'm onto something here, you know? And that allowed me to go to the next step. I didn't get bogged down. That's what I learned. And it was really cool. I think I spent a lot of time unsupervised. You know, I spent 10 years over and built 4 boats. And a lot of that time was really just like sitting back and staring at problems. And, you know, how can I utilize that space on the boat? You know, the pump engine needs to go there. The hoses need to wrap around. The sluice box needs to go there. There's only so many other places for the dive platform to actually be, you know, to put your weight belt and your breathing apparatus and harness and all the air hose that is involved in gold diving. And that process, I didn't have people looking over my shoulder except for the times that I was on TV. And that was super stressful, by the way. Like, if you want to be famous, like, think harder. But that unsupervised time, it really led me to have a certain amount of confidence in my Imagineering capabilities. And I mean, now I'm dealing with people that are way smarter than I am, because we're going to places that, I don't have a technical engineering degree. I have a country engineering degree, and that's totally different. And I have a ton of respect for the engineers that I work with. And I mean, they can, run circles around me technically. That being said, I'm good at bringing the pieces together. And that's something that I attribute back to gold diving is, I've been sourcing things internationally for, 15 years now. And so, I spend a lot of time living internationally. And so I spend a lot of time trying to be considerate of other people's cultures and not just hearing myself say English words, but paying particular attention to, what are people understanding from what I'm saying and being willing to pivot. Like, if I'm using a word, I'll notice energy. Like, if I use an offensive word in English, that's not offensive to me, but all of a sudden I know it has a double meaning in another language. And I'll be like, oh, wait, what did you just hear me say? And I'll pivot really quickly. I'll notice that sort of thing in my international communications. And so there's a lot of different experiences that I had that led to being able to do this. And frankly, there's a little bit of luck involved. I don't know why some of the bigger companies didn't produce a middle screen webcam. I'm not sure why that didn't happen, but here we are. We're doing it.
Yeah, it always seems like some of the more simple ideas, the one that comes out of nowhere. Like, it's so complex yet simple at the same time. It's really strange. It really comes down to one of those, oh, why didn't I think of that kind of ideas? Because, like, I'm looking at them like, never really thought about that. Never thought about, like, a camera in the middle of the screen. Like, we're still debating on a camera in the middle of the screen of our phones, and like we thought that was a big thing. Like, no, like, there's a lot more of complex yet simple things we have to deal with. So when it comes to your engineering team, you start off with just a simple idea. How big is your team right now?
It's still fairly small. It's a really weird balance. We were growing the team, but I found that I had grown the team a little bit bigger than we could afford. And so we had to shrink the team a little bit. My business partner is a manufacturing engineer, and he has an MBA. And he spent his time professionally between Caterpillar, General Electric, and a few startups that were in kind of the small home space. So he spent a lot of time either in big companies that have really different systems than startups do, and startups. And so he has a really diverse skill set, but more importantly, he has kind of a different process that he goes through for solving problems. I'm way more likely to jump in the pool and figure out how to swim. And he wants to make sure that there's like life rafts available and stuff like that. And, which is good, I think. And that's not to say like, I don't analyze risk, but in gold diving, it's like, I don't know, man, you figure out that I really risk a high risk tolerance level. And
Yeah, risk
we'll
it
just
for
say
the
it like that.
biscuit.
Yeah, and then other people on the team, I have most of the guys that I have on the team right now, they have a pretty good sense of design and flow. Most everybody on my team is part-time at the minute. And I have other people, as far as the engineering team, we're working with a firm of computer engineers so there's two other guys working on the state side. And then we also have manufacturing partners that we're interfacing with overseas. So the total team is probably 4 or 5 currently. So, and all those guys have different ideas about how things should move forward. And, I'm finding myself having to translate some of what they're saying into terms that I understand. And I'm having to learn a lot, man. Like I've never had a 2-year period where I've been on the edge of my ability. And it's exciting, but it's also, it's tiring, frankly. but I like what we're doing. I wouldn't be able to do what we're doing if it wasn't as compelling as it is.
All right, okay. Actually, yeah. Let's dive into a little bit of mental health because with a team of 4 or 5, maybe even at most 10 people, coming up with a brand new product, trying to do a Kickstarter, trying to convince people this is a real thing, it's not fake, because Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they have a lot of stuff that just seems too good to be true. And this, if I didn't look at it right now, when I read the email for the center cam, I was like, this is spam or this is too good to be true. Uh, uh, this it has to take a toll on you and your small team. So like, how do you guys get through some of the struggles of convincing people this is real, producing the product, and getting it out in people's hands?
Um, I mean, I've got to give a solid to my wife. We had just gotten married when I was working on the prototype, and um, I was working on it full time, and so she was supporting us there for a minute because I didn't. I had just finished grad school. I'd had a few years of some struggles financially, and this was the big thing, and I put everything into it. Like we ran out of money the first week of the Kickstarter for ad spend, so I had to borrow money, and it was right when our marketing video was going viral on Facebook at that time, and I had to borrow money from my business partner. So like that's some of the stress we had to deal with. And then everything went great. The reception was amazing. And then about sometime in May, we got feedback from our manufacturer that they couldn't buy the chip anymore that they used to put in the camera, because we had been buying the camera completed. And then all of a sudden the chip that went in the camera was unavailable. This is early 21, chipset shortage. It was affecting Tesla. It was affecting General Motors. And like, we're nobody. We're CenterCam. We're a startup. We can't just like call our guy and say, hey, fix it.
Right.
We don't have a guy. And so it's like, our manufacturing partner had to find another chip that could do the same thing and then repurpose it. But that was a whole development process. And that was probably the most stressful time that I've had, is that I had to message. We were sitting on a few $100,000 at the time. And I had to message to all the backers that were expecting their camera any day. Hey, we've had a delay, and I'm not sure how long it's going to last. I think it's going to be 1 or 2 months, might be longer, could be shorter. I'm not sure. And our manufacturer didn't know how long it was going to take either. And so, and there was English second language stuff going on. So they were trying to translate what they were hearing and the nuances that they were getting from the actual manufacturer about timeframes in a really nebulous environment. And they were translating that optimistically to me. And then I was trying to retranslate that like realistically with our backers. And there's a lot going on, man. One of the things that helped me is just knowing that as complicated as I just made that sound, a lot of the time the stress comes from the way that we frame something. And so, meaning if I think I'm overwhelmed, it's more likely the thing that I'm dealing with is going to be a lot harder for me than if I can find a way to, sometimes it's just a trick, but if I can find a way to say, you know what, this might be stressful, but this isn't near what I can handle. All of a sudden you just artificially change the thresholds of what you can actually handle. And then all of a sudden the thing that you're dealing with is a little bit easier. One of the things that I've done is I've studied historical figures over the years, and I love biographies. So I've read a lot about Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, a lot of current presidents, Winston Churchill, and a lot of those folks had very different, like Winston Churchill, I don't know that he had a lot of empathy. So there's parts of him that I don't want to become. But his ability to deal with stress at really crazy times. When you look at like what was happening at Dunkirk, I mean, the Allied forces were trapped on a beach. They were surrounded by Germans, and they didn't know if they were going to be able to get him off the beach. And he had to be a leader at that time. And when I look at him being able to like hold the line and be inspiring to his people, me dealing with like some chips is like, come on, Ian, you can handle this, So I know that human capacity, I don't human capacity is amazing to deal with stress. And there's so many different examples of people that acted with grace and in goodness amidst just impossible conditions. And I look at those situations and it helps inform me that, I can do this too. If they learned how to handle it, I can learn how to handle it. And then not be scared of those situations that are helping me grow. When we look at what stress actually is in our life, stress is usually the process of growth. And when we have an appreciation for that, it allows us to kind of reframe, like I said, how we treat stress. I think some people think like, oh, I'm stressed out, man. And it becomes this narrative of like, I can't anymore. And, they kind of shut down instead of thinking like when you go to the gym and you work your muscles, that's stress. You don't have to. You don't have to work your muscles, but you do. And the reason you do that is because you want to grow. You want to become stronger. And emotional muscles are the same way. And the only way to grow them is just to put yourself in stressful situations, make good choices, you make mistakes, and get better. And it's just part of the process, And I spent a lot of my 20s and early 30s not being very kind to myself for the mistakes that I would make. And I would say things like, you should be either better or in a different place. Or I would use a lot of that sort of language that just wasn't kind to myself. And somewhere in their late 30s, I got some coaching, and I spent a lot of time doubling, tripling down on the reading and the study that I was doing, kind of the self-improvement mixed with, historical study and stuff. And what I just realized is I needed to change the dialogue that I had with myself if I really wanted to go to the places I really wanted to go, because I couldn't continue to bring myself down if I was going to get to a place that created something big. And I would consider Center Camp one of those things. And it's not like the biggest idea that I have or the biggest idea in the world or anything, but I think it's affecting a lot of people positively. And I'm really proud that we're doing that. But to be able to manage the team and sit in the meetings that I'm sitting in right now, I had to scrub a lot of the negative self-talk from my brain. And it took a long time for me. Sometimes, some people are kinder to themselves and they get places, a little bit faster, but I had to do quite a bit of work to be able to do what I'm doing right now, and actually handle it and handle some of the stresses and some of the crazy stuff that comes over my plate every day.
And what about ego? Ego can be just as damaging as being down on yourself. Ego can take you to some pretty bad places. It can betray people. So how do you keep yourself from going from, okay, I can't do this, to I can do this, and staying away from, I'm the best there ever was, nobody's better than me, I'm the best thing that ever happened to anybody? How do you keep yourself in check from that kind of ego?
Dude, that's a great question. You're asking me like, how do you be humble, which is like a question. If you start answering that question, you're like disqualified from answering it. It's kind of interesting. I don't know. So initially I'd say I learned a lot from gold miners. Actually, gold miners spend a lot of time alone. And the gold divers up in Nome, a lot of them that build their own equipment, they spend a lot of time alone, and they come to this point where they're imagineering stuff and solving problems, and it's really easy when you're in that situation and you have little successes like that to start thinking, I'm really smart, I solve this problem all the time, I know how to solve problems, and you can start to have this little ego massage of like, I can figure it out, I'm so smart. And for me, I noticed that really quickly about a lot of the gold miners in those neck of the woods. And I love the community, so this isn't a dig, but and I've also traveled around with other miners, and there's a kind of a characteristic there that I noticed, and I bookmarked because I didn't want to be that person. Something that served me really well from the very beginning is asking people for help and asking people that are smarter than me for advice, and just kind of learning how to explain the problem really quickly so they could get it. And then they would give me all sorts of ideas. And the trouble with that is that if you're always this like an intern, so to speak, like people don't look to you to know how to do something. And so that's where the struggle for me is, that having that I guess awareness of the things that I don't know, and the willingness to not have ego involved and just ask for help, that served me so well that I'm still learning how to also be the subject expert. I'll just say it like that. And the way that I handle that is I do my best to not put fluff out there. Like if I don't know something, I try to say I don't know. And that happens with my meetings. If you were to ask my team the dynamic that I have in our meetings, I think they would say that I always have an agenda. I'm trying to get to a place, but when someone brings an idea that I'm not aware of, I easily adopt it. If it, like, I don't care where it comes from. And so that's part of my personal process. Guarding against that, I mean, I had to become really clear on what kind of a person I want to be. And they also the kind of person that people want to hear from. You know, I worked with alphas all the time. There's a lot of dudes, especially on television. Once you get on TV, it's like the biggest drug you can possibly have. There's a ton of validation. I was in Jerusalem, and it was like 2 years after I was even on the show, but I was in Jerusalem, like 3 blocks from the Wailing Wall. And I was in this restaurant, and this restaurant owner was like, "Hey, are you on the TV? I see you on the TV. There was a gold show. I see you on the TV." It was crazy. It was crazy. Like I was in the middle of the Middle East, and all of a sudden I got recognized. And some people can take that and just like, you know, it can just become this huge ego inflation. For me, it was, you know, I'm sure there was some of that too. It's super validating when people like do that, but it was also weird. I guess I have enough, I don't know, self-consciousness to know that it's just weird, you know, walking into a restaurant. It happened at freaking Texas Roadhouse once, you know, that restaurant. Yeah. It happened there one time. It was like, I walked in and somebody just took me aside. "I love your show. I love your gold boat smooch is so great." And it was like, it was crazy. And I'm like a H level celebrity, and it's not even like A, B, C, or D. It's like way down the alphabet. Like I'm nobody, you know. But I don't know, staying grounded, having good people around you, stuff like that.
Okay, so before we end our meeting, man, this has been a hell of a talk. I really enjoy talking about how you got to where you are and some of the things that you've learned. So continue on learning. For somebody who has an idea, who wants to get it out there, who's scared to do Kickstarter because it is stressful work, it is a lot of work, who doesn't have the same connections, who's trying to start something up, what would be your advice to them to keep going and keep pushing and to actually make that startup happen?
Jump in the pool. You'll figure out how to swim if it's important to you. Jump in. Don't be worried if you're quite there yet. Just jump in, and there's an energy that happens in your life when you're developing something that you don't understand until you're in the middle of it. And it kind of, it's like a snowball, so to speak. And so I have a lot of friends. There's another thing I've observed in the mining community, but also just in the community in general. I've observed a lot of people, they get stuck in the perfection of a thing, and they don't ask themselves, how quickly can I get this out there? Do I even want to be doing this? If this is successful, do I want to be doing the things that will be required for this to be a success? And they don't allot the proper amount of time to something. Meaning I have a lot of friends that get bogged down in just side projects, and they don't actually push one thing forward. They get bogged down in like 10 or 12 different things, and they get bogged down in the perfection of it. And there's this very specific system that I use when I'm fleshing out a project. Like for this one, it was, I had certain parameters that I had to follow. It needed to be easily adjustable. It needed to be really small, and it needed to work for the vast majority of people that would want to use it. I didn't have a ton of budget to throw at it, so I needed to find a manufacturing partner that could help me. And that was one of the things that took as long as it did, was just finding somebody that was willing to work with me. Now I know a lot better. Anyway, so following your budget is another thing, because you don't need a lot of money usually. If you have a good enough idea and you can figure out a prototype and show people, most people need to see, like people that would either invest or help you, they need to see the thing. And so figuring out a way to put together a demo so people can actually see it. If I had just described a middle screen webcam, we never would have gotten where we got to. But I had to produce it. And that was another thing that I learned a long time ago. Like, a lot of people get stuck on their idea, and you'd be surprised how many people have this great idea that they're going to sit in their living room with their entire lives instead of trying to produce it. And it takes a lot. Like, you have to deal with a lot of naysayers. You have to deal with a lot of stuff. But what I would say is that if it's not that important to you, then don't worry about it, because if it is important to you, it's going to be part of your identity. Like, I had to push this out there. And if someone else had come up with it somewhere in the middle of it, like in 2020, if someone else had produced it, I absolutely wouldn't have gone as far as we have. But to date, we're the only ones producing this. And sometimes you don't know that stuff, and there's luck involved. But if it's important to you, just start. That's the most important thing. Take a step today.
All right, well, Mr. Ian, I am so glad we got to do this again after the first Kerfuffle, because we had such a long talk beforehand. So I'm so glad we got to do this again. And I, of course, will be showing off more of the center cam. This is just one of many things that I'm going to be using it for. I'm pretty sure I'm going to use it for the rest of the interviews that I have in the nearby future. I actually really enjoy using this thing. It's very easy to use. So before we leave, is there anything you'd like to say about the center cam? Anything you'd like to sell forth towards everybody listening?
We covered a lot of ground,
I'm glad to hear that.
But I mean, well, for people that are looking to use it, I'd love to, if you have unique use scenarios, I'd love to hear about it. We haven't heard a lot from gamers, and I think center cam is a great opportunity for Twitch streamers to, put their followers like right in the mix of what they're doing, so it's not, the camera angle isn't here of you playing, it's like right here, and seeing like where you're looking and how you're going about your business. And we haven't gotten a lot of feedback on that aspect of center cam, so I'm really interested in that. So that would be the only thing I'd ask is you said have you noticed that aspect for you? You said you're using it for Twitch streaming. How's that aspect been for you?
So far, I do notice that the camera's there only because I play a lot of first-person shooters. So my attention is usually always in the middle of the screen anyhow. So like going back and watching it, it seems kind of iffy for me because I'm not used to just like looking straight at the screen like that. Like, I am used to it being like the camera up top and like you do see an angle. So it's definitely different. I'll give it that. It's definitely different. I am going to use it a bit more for other things, such as doing these kind of interviews and stuff. It is very interesting to be able to look straight ahead and not look everywhere at once. But for streaming, I do think it's interesting. I think I still need a little more time using it for streams. My chat hasn't said anything about it, so I think they might like it because they haven't been like, why is your camera like right in front of your face like that? So I definitely got a lot more connections out of it. So I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's really neat. And it's definitely something that I'm going to use more often because I do like the just plug in and use aspects of it. And all my programs, they just work with it flawlessly. They instantly recognize it as its own thing. I don't have to use a secondary program. I could just use it right as it is, and I really actually enjoyed it. And I also like the I'm actually gonna I can't take it down, but you also gave me the big clip that I got to use to put on there because my screen, it doesn't have the gap in between where the screen and the actual frame is.
Hmm.
And that was one of my concerns, was like I'll have to clip it onto my screen, which is something I didn't want to do. But I do like the big clip because it does sit on there just fine, to where I can just deal with the camera itself and I don't have to worry about
Hmm.
adjusting everything else.
Yeah, cool. All right, cool. Well, keep me posted. I'm curious about it.
I definitely will, and hopefully, the further you guys get with the Center or Cinecam 2 and 3 and 4.0, you and I can come back and talk about these kind of things again, because it's very interesting to hear from diving for gold to making center cameras. I find it very interesting.
Well, thanks, man. It's the only life I got, so I'm trying to use it.
Hey, this is great because, like you said, a lot of people, they sit and they have great ideas and they want to go forward with it. And I think something like this, with the concept of a center cam that nobody actually thought about happening, it's 2022. We can all pretty much do something now, and like this is a cool proof that you can do something of interest. And it sounds like a crazy idea, and then when you actually create it, it's actually kind of cool. And yeah, again, like my my Logitech camera is not being in use right now. I'm using the center cam because I think it's a very interesting concept and idea.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you for joining us, Evan. I know you're busy. Thank you for connecting me and Ian. I truly appreciate it. And Ian, I hope to talk to you again real soon.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Anytime. Appreciate it.
No problem.